Welcome to the wonderful world of wine. We are your hosts, Mark Lindsay and Kim Simone, exploring all things wine with you. You can find us on Facebook at The Wonderful World of Wine. Hello again, everybody, and thank you for joining Kim and I on Franklin Radio, WFPR 102.9. How are you, Kim?
I'm well, Mark. How are you doing?
Everything's fine. Thank you
Great.
very much. We have another current article that just came out, Kim, we had to tell our listeners about today. It was a study by, I'm trying to find it, was on UPI.com, but I believe it was a State of the Wine report by a Silicon Valley Bank. And it just came out. And again, it was a little depressing because it says the wine industry badly needs to attract millennials. And right away, we sent this to each other and said, we gotta update the listeners again. More breaking kind of bad trending news in the wine world. And the first thing I did, Kim, is I had to refresh myself with the millennial age ranges and the baby boomers and the Gen X and the Gen Zs, because I always get the range wrong. And so millennials.
Yeah, when we're talking about millennials, we're not talking about people in their 20s any longer.
Yeah, 26 to 41 is the millennials.
Yep.
And they're saying they're turning away from wine, Kim. What did you think?
It's hard, because you kind of figure like, well, by that age range, you should, if you're going to start to have an interest in wine, you will have started by now, right? I always say that we really can't expect the newly legal to suddenly have this interest in big California Cabernets and the fine wines of Europe. But, after a few years of being of legal drinking age and experimenting with some things, you would think that if people were interested in wine, then they would have started buying more and showing up in these reports. But it's saying that maybe isn't the case. And I actually found this report to be very interesting.
Well, the newly legal now, the 21s would be the Gen Z people, which they didn't even really talk about. They did say that the boomers, the baby boomers, the 58 to 67, the people who were wine is for, who was buying, and they drink more than 2 to 1 more than millennials. So it was focusing on that. And it says millennials are just turning away and they're going to other things. They're basically bored with wine. And if they don't start jumping on drinking wine, they're saying the consumption of wine may drop as much as 20% based on this report. So they're kind of putting out the caution. We got to do something here to grab the millennials, or wine is in trouble.
And that does sound like quite the dire warning, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, and this is a bank reporting it to basically people in the wine industry who want to borrow money from the banks to produce wine or grow grapes or something.
Right.
So,
and this is an organization that every year releases sort of a state of the industry, big, long, complicated kind of report. So I always pay attention when this one comes out because they're so consistent. And they have years and years worth of data and information and things that they look into. So this is one of those things that I feel like people can trust in as opposed to a marketing thing from a winery or whatnot.
And they were saying people were expecting the wine to rebound when the restaurants started getting active again. Instead, they lost market share. And some of the factors might have been factors that the wine growth is down, and maybe because of things we mention all the time, the droughts, the fires, the climate change, insurance costs.
Sort of this doom and gloom that is going along with wine at the moment.
Yeah. So all those negative things we tell our listeners about all the time, people are hearing it and saying kind of it's turning them off from the wine. They also mentioned they're getting reports that 42% of producers say they will raise their wine prices, which I'm sure you're seeing. I'm seeing this now is everything I'm ordering. In the industry, it's pretty common. Maybe a vintage might go up one price point, which one price point's maybe $2 to $5 a case. Now they're going up $20-$30 a case.
Yeah, I'm definitely noticing the increase in prices.
And that will turn off younger I believe, generation from spending.
Mm-hmm.
They had some quote in there saying millennials, they lived through the Great Recession and a pandemic, but they're not determined, or they don't want to show that they have wealth by buying wine, which was kind of a interesting little comment they made about that. Recommendations, Kim. What they said, recommendations producers to get millennials back into wine. You find any of those think that they would work, that they said?
I mean, I kind of had a different take, but I feel like they may have said in this article that restaurants have rebounded from the pandemic, but I really don't see that. And I don't think that has happened yet. So I think that once we really do see either a shift in how restaurants are run and how people are going to restaurants, I think that will have an impact and that will be beneficial to the wine industry. I really don't see that we can count on the restaurant industry right now to be that mover and shaker for the wine industry for these younger consumers. So, I mean,
they're open again.
They're open, but that's not,
they're doing the wine business.
Yeah, that they're doing a lot of wine business. I mean, we've heard so much about wine lists being cut and reduced. Staffing is an issue. So if you don't even have enough staff to fully staff your restaurant during service, how can you then spend time to train them on something like wine, which usually feels like an added extra bonus? So I feel like that will be a benefit to the wine industry once restaurants really have recuperated. But some of the things that they talk about in this article about how to bring younger adults into the fold of wine drinking is stuff that we've been talking about, that marketing folks have been talking about for years, doing this focus on health and focus on diversity and focus on how environmentally friendly is the product. So I don't feel like there's necessarily any new ideas in this article.
What did they mean by, I saw the diversity thing and they were saying staff diversity.
Mm-hmm.
So not like the wines are diverse. I mean, it's like,
no, I think that means more like who is working in the tasting room. Do they look like the consumer? Can they make a connection to those younger consumers, whether that's age or gender or race or whatnot?
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. And they said to highlight social values more.
Yeah, that whole value-oriented thing.
Yeah, sustainability, which we always talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And you made a good point about the restaurants. Now, I think a lot of people go in there for cocktails instead of the wine because they've had wine where they were home with COVID, but they want to go out and have someone make them a nice drink.
Right. Because it's, it highlights this is something special and different that I can't get at home.
Yeah. And in the restaurants, they're probably not getting the product they used to get, or they're not meeting with people like they were in the past to change the list or update their lists for their wine list. I mean, there's a lot of work, as you know, having done it in the industry. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of preparation for that list and meeting with people and producers, and no one was traveling or you can't get the product. So a lot of things have affected that might have also caused people to lose interest in the wines in the restaurant.
Yeah. And at this point, I feel like, well, something's got to give because so many of these restaurants are just barely hanging on. And I have a feeling that it's the wine list that's suffering. It's the wine program that no longer existing because either the person who handled it is no longer there, or there just isn't the time to give it the attention that would make more consumers be interested in their wine programs.
They mentioned less lifestyle, rich and famous, and more cause-based marketing. So less glamification, if that's a word, of wine, and just basically push something to promote it where someone will jump on your cause to drink the wine.
But see, if then you look at influencers and social media and, people that are pushing wine brands on Instagram, it's not though, it is that pushing of the lifestyle. So I don't know that I necessarily agree that the glamour part of it has taken a back seat.
Now, I don't want to put this out to the listeners, Kim, if you don't want to, but aren't you a millennial?
I am not.
You're not?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm a Gen Xer.
Oh, just barely. right?
By a couple years, yeah.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, because you're in, I was thinking you're in this range here. Well, you must have a lot of friends that are in that range.
I have a few, yeah, but
know.
I'm a little older than this.
Okay.
But thank you for thinking that I'm a little bit younger.
All right. We're in the same range for a few years anyway. Right? Both Gen X. And they didn't mention anything about the Gen X, but just the boomers, the baby boomers are drinking.
Yeah. My poor generation, we kind of get lost in the shuffle sometimes.
We're helping.
People forget about us.
Yeah.
You know?
We're helping the cause.
You're listening to The Wonderful World of Wine, and we are your hosts, Mark and Kim. You can find more information about Mark at his website, franklinliquors.com, and more information about myself at commonwealthwineschool.com. And as always, you can find our past episodes on SoundCloud and iTunes. Welcome back to The Wonderful World of Wine. We are Mark and Kim. And there have been a slew, it seems, of new television shows in January that all launched focusing on wine. So we have 3 brand new TV shows that either are based at a winery or out of a winery, or somehow have wine as a central focus of the show. And I just thought that this was something interesting and fun that we had to talk about.
Yeah, it's always good to see something, promoting wine. We just saying we need it from our first segment there. And I'm a huge program going way back to when Andrea Emmer was on the Food Network, those type of things. But usually most of them are like Rick Steves or Dream of Italy or food-based.
Travel things.
Yeah, they're not like reality-based shows or comedies or anything like that based on wine. So when you sent me the list of shows, I have to admit I had to binge watch a few because when I saw a few of them, I'm like, oh, these don't look like they're not documentaries. They're not geeky enough for me, maybe. So I kind of had to, I binge watch it just so we could tell our listeners about them. So
great.
So what's the first one we want to tell the listeners about, Kim?
So the first one is Promised Land.
Okay, Promised Land.
So the first one is called Promised Land, and this is a show that seems to be an awful lot like the show from the 80s, Dynasty.
Yeah.
Which, if anyone is older than me and was able to watch Dynasty when it was on television, it seems to be very similar to that. Family drama, succession, lots of wealth, lots of landscape shots. So, but it's set in Sonoma, I believe, and follows the family trials and tribulations of a family of folks who are Mexican immigrants and own a winery in California, and about passing the winery on to the next generation and everything that happens to them.
Yeah, it's like the American dream for the wine lover, really, and I felt this one is more drama based, and it's less about the wine business or focusing on the wines. I mean, they show beautiful scenery, but it's more about the background story of the American dream of immigrants coming into the country and just building up a wine empire.
Mm-hmm. So it's like wine is the background for the show, but there's not necessarily too much focus on wine.
Yeah, so far only a few episodes have been made so far. So my review so far is it's interesting drama, but it didn't pull me in as a wine geek. Let's say that.
Well, that's what the documentaries are for, right?
Yeah.
To pull you in with the wine geekiness.
It's interesting background. I like how they work things in, bringing past and present together. But I needed more wine stuff, which the Kings of Napa, if we can move on to that one.
Yes.
That one is another family-based wine family.
Right.
That it's really
also a drama.
Another drama, yeah. And when I'm watching it, I'm like, it's Napa, so they live in a beautiful house. It's like like we talked, the lifestyle of rich and famous here, and I don't know, Kim. There was a few things, I guess, because of the geekiness. They're in Napa, and they made a comment about they had to focus on their Pinot Grigio this year. Right. And as wine geeks, we know there's not much.
There's not much
in
Grigio being
Napa,
grown in
growing Pinot
Napa.
Grigio. So things like that. And then in all the shows, I always watch how people hold their wine glasses and they're all holding them by the bowl. And I'm like, these are wine like people. And the way what they're showing here is there's some things, I don't know if they have wine consultants or not, but saying Pinot Grigio and Napa. And then at one point they're in their wine room and it looked like they had a bunch of Riesling, and the family's kind of focusing on producing a new style, marketing something different. And they said, let's make a dessert wine in Napa. So it's like a lot of that didn't seem realistic, but a lot of drama. And unlike the Promised Land, the Kings of Napa, it does talk a lot of kind of maybe a lot of technical geeky stuff about wine, describing wines and stuff like that. So like
more wine in Kings of Napa than in Promised Land. More actual wine.
More of the wine business so far, definitely. But I find little things here and there that kind of get me turned off about it. But then the drama draws me back in. I can't watch this as a wine geek, but then the drama just draws me in.
So do you find that about wine movies too, that you find yourself over analyzing or even just analyzing what's going on with the wine?
Yeah. I see Hallmark does this a lot. You probably see a lot of wine-based movies. At Christmas, there was like an ice wine movie, but it was realistic because it was New York. It was like where they make ice
Niagara.
wine. Yeah. So, but then the love thing kicked in, and but that's Hallmark. It happens all the time. But this Kings of Napa, the lifestyle they're living, it seems so unapproachable and snobby that I don't know if that's going to draw people in to want to drink wine or like wine based on their lifestyle. I mean, that's not the people we talked about it a few minutes ago. It's that the people you're trying to grab. I mean, I don't know. It kind of makes me feel bad that, or it makes me understand why Napa wine is so much money, because these people are driving Ferraris and living in mansions and everything else.
Yeah, but how realistic is that though?
Well, I don't know. They're making it look like that's the common thing for a Napa winery, and there's been a few more episodes of this show than The Promised Land.
It looked like this one started at the beginning of January.
Yeah, a lot of family drama, and but just technically, I found a little thing. I'm sure that we'll find a lot of articles that way. The other show, Kim, the Grand Cru now.
This is a different one because this is a comedy.
Yeah, it's a comedy. And when I first saw the previews for it, I'm like, oh, this looks cool. They hang out at a wine bar all day. And the first episode, it's a group of friends and they get together at a bar at the end of the day. And the first 25 minutes of the first episode, they don't touch a wine. They're not in a wine bar. They're not talking about wine. I say, what's going on here? This is a wine show. And then they build you up that they finally find a wine bar that they like, and that's where they go to all the time, and that kind of builds the whole story. Now they're bonding over wine, and they're telling them about their daily lives. And then I look, and they're all holding the glasses by the bowl, and I'm like, oh, I'm such a geek. I just can't watch a show and not pick, why they're doing it, and then the wines are weird colors, and I don't know what they're drinking, and
So you're saying that these TV shows, they need a wine consultant?
I would think they would have one.
I would think so too.
But
it's like you don't do a medical show and not have like a doctor on the writing staff, right?
Right. But the Grand Cru, it's comedy. It's a good thing to, I think, promote wine more than the other two, because it's just how people can bond over wine, and what the whole thing. The best thing about wine is the stories behind it, and sharing stories, drinking wine. So I think,
and one of the things I read about that show too is that the actors have a really nice camaraderie with each other. So the idea that this is a group of friends who at the end of the day, get together and drink wine together seems realistic,
right?
Because the actors have good rapport with each other.
Right. And that's why I think this is good for the wine industry to see.
Because that's how we drink, right? We want to have a glass of wine with our friends.
That's one of the things I want to ask you when we're going to talk about these TV shows. Do you think these are good promotions for people to start drinking wine, or that will get people to drink wine?
I don't think that's their purpose. They're not, I think it's a backdrop. I think that certainly for the ones that are set in, at the wineries, sort of lifestyle of the rich and famous kind of thing, that it's more like that the wine background is a set piece. It's not there to
why all of a sudden 3 shows?
I don't know.
Based on wine.
I know. That's what I found so interesting too. Is like, what is it about? We talk about the romance of wine and how wine will capture people's imagination. And I have to think that that has something to do with it, that there's just something intrinsically appealing. And I don't know. But after talking about our article about how the wine industry is having difficulty with getting millennial consumers to drink wine, here we have Grand Cru, which is focusing on a group of young people and young African-American people around wine and their interest in food and wine and, being together and just having a nice time with it and enjoying it and learning a little bit about it. So it seems very different, or a little off the beaten path from all of these dreary reports that we've gotten about the state of the industry and who's drinking and who's not.
So do you think the 26 to 41-year-old millennials, these shows are for them?
I think so. Maybe not the Dynasty-esque ones, but I think the comedy, sure.
Yeah, the Grand Cru, though, the people in that show are in that range. So
right.
I think they would gravitate
young professionals, that kind of age.
Yeah, and I think they can relate to that more than the other two. They, to me, come off a little snobby and kind of unrealistic for younger generations. It kind of makes me jealous, that these people live in this lifestyle and every night are just opening a expensive bottle. And the Grand Cru one is definitely can grab more people, I think, to say, let's go out to a local place and let's sit down and share some wine, versus I'm going to try to find this Napa wine and buy it.
And do you think it would make it appealing to people? Like, I think it's very interesting to have wine as the centerpiece of a TV show, have the point not be getting people interested in wine,
Yeah. Well, I was waiting for the wine commercials to come out. I'm surprised no marketing people went that route and say, hey, let's put some one of our products up in between on a commercial. But no,
no yellowtail ads to be seen anywhere. They're
missing out on that. Man, I should have ran a store commercial with the in between.
Maybe.
Company.
Oh, that's funny.
And, yeah. So new shows. And I did see an article that was it said something, there was some technical issues, but it was behind a pay site and I couldn't get to it. I'm wondering if they had the same kind of take on it that I did about the little technical things, but I couldn't get to it.
Maybe because we do, we do close watches of those things. And I'm sure just like lawyers don't necessarily watch lawyer shows for all the same reasons. Sometimes it's a little harder for us to get into fiction with wine at the focus because we know it so well that we can get annoyed.
Well, now that you told me about them, Kim, it tied me up because I had to tape all the upcoming shows because I watched them. Now I'm hooked. So now added to my time I don't have to watch more shows.
That's right.
My wife's upset with you because now.
Hey, this was business.
Something else I had to watch. Right. So, but I hope the listeners check them out and see what they think and let us know. Do you think this will get you more interested in wine, or is it a good direction for wine to go to promote like this?
Or is it just an escape? Sometimes we want to watch those shows about luxurious places that we may never go. And maybe that is the point of a show about wine.
Thank you for joining us today on The Wonderful World of Wine. Kim and I are here every week on Franklin Radio, WFPR 102.9 FM. For more information about Kim, please go to her website at commonwealthwineschool.com. For more information about myself, please go to franklinliquors.com. You can find us on Facebook at The Wonderful World of Wine. We'd like any questions or comments you have. Let us know if you've watched these TV shows. You can find us also on Twitter at Wine Education, and you can find us on SoundCloud and iTunes to find our past episodes. Cheers.